Good evening, my name is Marcin Przasnek and welcome to Flash News. We begin with the words of Polish Prime Minister. Mateusz Morawiecki said that Poland has not had such a tense situation on the border with Belarus for 30 years. He warns that the joint Belarusian-Russian military exercises near the border with Poland could be a pretext for provocations. In recent days alone, border guards have thwarted almost 500 attempts to illegally cross our border.
The pressure on our border continues, says Mariusz Kamiński. Since the introduction of a state of emergency, more than 450 attempts to illegally cross the border were made. During the day, at night, practically on the entire section with Belarus. In principle, 100% of these attempts were prevented by our officers and soldiers. Only in one case of a Congolese citizen who was found in the border strip with a twisted leg, this person was detained and the necessary medical attention was taken. We haven't had such a tense situation on the border with Belarus for 30 years, the Prime Minister said. The situation is not eased by the fact that the Belarusian-Russian military exercises Zapad 2021 will begin in 4 days. They may involve various provocations. Already today, the commander informed us about explosions heard on the Belarusian-Polish border. The Polish border guard has shown further photos which prove that the creation of the encampment near Usnarz Górny is the result of the actions of the Belarusian services. Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, Lebanon, Somalia and Egypt are where migrants come from. In Belarus, there are about 10,000 migrants taken there by the Lukashenko regime. The head of the Ministry of Interior said that the state of emergency has also successfully enabled to capture members of organized crime groups involved in human smuggling. These are mainly Ukrainians, Georgians, Chechens, citizens of post-Soviet republics. We have a family that paid $40,000 to bring this family to the European Union. Some of them, after crossing the border, are surprised to find themselves in Poland and not in Germany. The state of emergency, although it increases the effectiveness of services, limits the activity of entrepreneurs in the border zone, especially those in the tourism industry. Mateusz Morawiecki announced that within 2 days the government will adopt a draft law through which entrepreneurs will be able to receive compensation of 65% of income from the last 3 months. The head of Polish border guards appealed for respect for his officers. It is just sad and I feel sorry when from many sides we are attacked and insulted. Is it our fault that we are faithful to the oath? Is it our fault that we protect the borders of our homeland? I think not. General Tomasz Praga thanked the residents of border towns for their understanding.
The design of the last section of the A2 freeway between Biała Podlaska and the border with Belarus has begun. This is a key route for eastern Poland, said the Minister of Infrastructure. The construction of 2 more sections of the Via Carpatia road in Podlasie also started today.
The A2 freeway is to connect Poland's western and eastern borders. 7 sections of this route are being implemented east of Warsaw. In total, it is more than 100 kilometers. The contract signed today for the design of the last section of this route assumes the construction of 32 kilometers of freeway between Biała Podlaska and the border with Belarus. This investment is particularly needed for the Polish economy, our transport. By 2030, we will have a coherent road and communication network of our country. The construction of subsequent sections of A2 freeway is possible thanks to the funds from the National Roads Construction Program. Under this program, the A2 freeway section between Warsaw and Łódź will also be extended. This is supposed to facilitate the access to, among others, the central transportation port being constructed. A2 is a key road, a key freeway to connect the eastern parts of our country. We see how much transit towards the border goes, but also from the border towards central Poland passes through here. And this is already the S19 expressway in Podlasie, which is part of the Via Carpatia route connecting the north with the south of Europe. Construction of 2 more sections has started. This road will certainly be a window on the world, but it will also contribute to the economic development of this region. Both sections are expected to be ready in 4 years. Investments also in Pomerania. A new oil terminal was opened in Gdańsk. After a period of 2.5 years, Poland has completed an investment that is very important for the security of oil supplies to Polish refineries. Thanks to the investment, about 2 million cubic meters of crude oil can be stored at the Polish Sea. We keep our word. Thanks to this, customers can import oil from different parts of the world, oil of different types. The Gdańsk oil terminal is the only facility of its kind in Poland accepting different types of oil delivered by sea.
99% of patients who end up in the hospital because of COVID-19 are unvaccinated. Doctors warn that the 4th wave of the cases will almost 100% involve unvaccinated people, as we are already seeing in other countries.
More than 700,000 children between the ages of 12 and 18 have received the vaccine. That's less than 1/3 in that age group. Meetings are underway in schools with parents and students about the vaccination campaign. In a week's time, we will already be organizing vaccinations. If there are few children, we will go out with them to the vaccination points, and if there are more, we will organize mobile points here. The number of doses administered has dropped noticeably in recent weeks, even though access to preparations is easier than ever before. The immunity injection can be obtained not only at the clinic, but also in a pharmacy, shopping mall, and also at many parishes. It is worth taking advantage of. I leave this to the discretion of each and every one of those who will decide whether to vaccinate or not. 99% of coronavirus patients are unvaccinated. Almost identical statistic applies to deaths. In fact, the fourth wave, which will probably come soon, will only affect the unvaccinated. Nearly 90 million Poles are fully vaccinated. This is not a sufficient number to protect us from the fourth wave. This is a number that will definitely reduce the fourth wave compared to the third wave. Hospitals are ready, the health ministry says. Right now, 6,000 beds are prepared for COVID patients, and that number could be doubled in 3 days. From the logistical side, we are fully prepared for a possible increase in infection, but there is still a question of preparing the population. I'm talking about preparation in terms of vaccination. According to expert forecasts, the fourth wave of the disease will hit with full force already in September and will reach its peak in October.
Guaranteeing vaccines against COVID-19 to countries most in need was one of the goals of the meeting in Rome of ministries of health from 20 most developed countries. At the end of the meeting, a joint declaration was signed, which the Italian health minister called the Rome Pact. Italy currently holds the presidency of the G20.
Minister Roberto Speranza, host of the meeting, stressed that currently the inequality between richer countries with very high vaccination rates and those that are far behind them is very high. The Rome Pact aims to help change this as it recognizes the COVID-19 vaccine as a right for all, not a privilege for the few. The second topic of discussion among health ministers was increasing the strength of national health systems through investment, among others. Minister Speranza indicated that a very significant change in healthcare is needed to allow a sick person to be treated regardless of their economic conditions, place of birth, and color of skin.
The Taliban have announced that they have captured the last region of Afghanistan, the Panjshir Valley, after a multi-day offensive. If true, they have the entire country under their control, something no previous government has managed in over 40 years. But the armed opposition denies it has lost, and the leader of its forces, Ahmed Massoud, has called for a national uprising against the Taliban.
The Taliban posted a video online showing its fighters hoisting a flag in front of the provincial governor's office. Resistance fighters, however, deny reports that the valley has been captured and say that they are still present in all strategic positions and are continuing the fight. However, they admitted that heavy fighting took place there overnight. According to Afghan journalists, the area was bombarded by helicopters and drones belonging to Pakistan, which has supported the Taliban for years. In an audio recording posted on social media, Ahmad Massoud, leader of the Afghan National Resistance Front, called for a national uprising against the Taliban. He also blamed the international community for legitimizing the Taliban's power. The mountain valley was never conquered by either the Soviets in the 1980s or the Taliban during their 1996-2001 rule.
Several dozen people were injured, including police officers and more than a dozen detainees. This is the result of protests against the ingress of the Archbishop of the Serbian Orthodox Church, Janicius II, in Montenegro. In Cetinje, where the ingress was held, there were demonstrations and riots.
Protesters gathered about 100 meters from the historic church in Cetinje, which is considered a symbol of Montenegrins' independence aspirations. Demonstrators threw stones and bottles at police officers. They tried to prevent the archbishop and the participants of the ingress from entering the church. Joannicus II and guests of the ceremony arrived at the place by helicopter. Earlier, police used tear gas to disperse the demonstrators. Most residents of Montenegro belong to the Serbian Orthodox Church. However, a significant number of Montenegrins, including the country's president, believe that the Serbian authorities do not recognize Montenegro's independence and are using the church to interfere in its internal affairs. A spectacular escape of Palestinians from Israeli prison. 6 inmates escaped from Gilboa prison, which has the reputation of the most heavily guarded in the entire country. The men got outside the walls through a tunnel they dug together. The entrance was located under a sink in a restroom. 5 of the fugitives belong to the terrorist organization Islamic Jihad, and one is a former commander of the armed arm of the Al-Fatah organization. They traditionally added style to Venice. The city of canals hosted its annual regatta. Participants sailing in historical costumes through the Grand Canal proudly presented themselves before the Venetians and tourists. We can assume that such views accompanied the characters of Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice. The regatta refers to the glory days of the Republic of Venice, the period between the 13th and 16th centuries.
Chaos on the streets of Paris caused by the speed limit of 30 kilometers per hour. The new rule is criticized by transport companies and cab drivers. Some drivers don't even follow it, while others block traffic by driving at the speed limits.
Since the end of August, the speed limit has been enforced throughout Paris, except for a few arterial roads and the ring road of the French capital. Drivers believe that the confusion is not only caused by the new rule, but also by electric scooters and cyclists who often do not know the rules of the road. Others complain that overtaking is impossible with the current speed limit. All this causes chaos, overuse of horns and sudden braking. Several lawyers have decided to challenge the new speed limit in court.
They filter air, produce oxygen, purify and store water. These are just some of the services provided by plants. Researchers at the University of California, Berkeley have examined how root length translates into carbon storage.
Plants take in carbon dioxide from the air, excrete oxygen and build carbon into their tissues, including those that make up the root system. Through the roots, the element enters the soil and participates in the formation of biomass. Berkeley researchers have shown that the longer and more extensive the root system, the greater the efficiency of carbon fixation in the soil. Plants transport it to layers from which it is not released during plowing, fires or natural erosion processes. After a pandemic break, bull racing has returned in Spain. In the town of Villa Seca de la Sagra near Toledo, they will continue until the 12th of September. 10 bulls took part in the first run and none of the participants was injured. The entertainment is controversial because the animals participate in a corrida the day after the race. Recent polls show that 47% of Spaniards oppose bullfighting. It was all just a lot of hot air, and that was about it. Residents of Dresden and tourists who came to the German city on the Elbe River were able to listen to an unusual performance. The Dresden Symphony Orchestra performed a piece written by Andreas Gundlach. The work is entitled Concerto Grosso for 5 steamers and orchestra. The musicians on the ship played theirs, the steamers played theirs, and everything created a perfect harmony. What goes around comes around and can also impress at a later date. Valencia, Spain hosted the traditional festival of La Fala, or the Festival of Fire. Normally the event is held in March, but it was moved to September due to the pandemic. The last day refers to the cult of Saint Joseph, the patron saint of carpenters. Huge figures called Ninot are burned then. This year's work depicted an image of a nurse, a symbol of the fight against the pandemic.
Lots of memories and tears of emotion. The Opole Festival provided many emotions yesterday. The stage was taken over by Krzysztof Krawczyk again. Artists paid tribute to the singer who died in April in the show Krzysztof Krawczyk, You Will Dance With Me for the Last Time. The evening was crowned by the literary song concert.
This concert will not be forgotten by the audience in Opole. The artist alone and together with Krzysztof Krawczyk, thanks to archival materials, sang his greatest hits. The artist who died in April for decades was a giant of the stage. Despite the fact that you could hear and see him on the screens, we are sure that he's watching the concert from above, smiling at all the artists. Many generations of Poles were raised on his music. My dad had a driving school. As I was a toddler, he would take me there in the back. I drove with him all day. He taught the students, and Krzysztof Krawczyk was playing non-stop one cassette, so I know the greatest hits by heart. In Opole, we could not miss friends with whom Krzysztof Krawczyk started his career. To pay tribute to him for his talent, for his great thing he did for the audience, for all of us.
Wysoki poziom artystyczny.
High artistic level, a couple of performances were sensational, which just surprised me, and I think that Krzysiu is also satisfied. He produced a lot of hits, over 100 albums with his music were released, he had no equal. For me, Krzysztof Krawczyk's work was decisive in my career because I got such a fantastic proposal to sing backup vocals on his album. He turned out to be a fantastic person. He taught me a lot. Krzysztof Krawczyk's wife, who watched the concert together with the audience, could not hide her emotions. I did not expect this concert to be so beautiful, so moving. I cried and laughed and fell into a reverie. As he saw it, and I hope he does, he is proud of everything that happened here. The artist has performed on Opole's stage many times. Everyone loves him here. Legend of Polish music, we were also with my daughter at his concert 2 years ago. We still managed to be. We love Krzyś and always will. It was a tribute from the audience and artists to the king of the stage, including the one in Opole. The evening in Opole ended with a literary song concert. For 3 festival days, the audience enjoyed the greatest hits.
According to the French, he was a national treasure, a great hero, a magician of words. The French say goodbye to one of the most outstanding actors and film producers, Jean-Paul Belmondo. He played many roles, including in such films as Breathless and Mad Peter. He died at the age of 88. It's a real huge loss for the world. And that's all for today. Thank you for watching and have a good night.